Historical figures are not the divine entities we often picture in our heads. They were, after all, human beings like you and me. Let's demystify them once again, shall we? These are another 10 funny stories from ancient Rome. And stick around because number 1, it's something else, believe me. Number 10, Augustus and the Ravens. When Augustus had defeated Mark Antony at the Battle of Actium, he returned to Rome to find a man with a raven among the people greeting him. The bird greeted Augustus with the words, "Hail Caesar Imperator," and so impressed with the bird, he bought it for 20,000 sesterces. An acquaintance of the man, supposedly his business partner, told Augustus the man had another raven. So Augustus ordered the second raven brought in, who said, "Hail Anthony Imperator." And Augustus, amused, bought this bird as well, giving the money to the second man. The whole episode prompted people to start teaching their birds the Caesar greeting, but one man, trying to do so, failed miserably, and began saying, "Nothing to show for the trouble and expense." The bird didn't pick up on "Hail Caesar Imperator," but did pick up on "Nothing to show for the trouble and expense," began parroting it over and over. This man eventually found himself with Augustus, who found the whole thing hilarious and ended up buying the bird for a much higher price than any other. Number 9, Jovian's death. I have previously mentioned Valentinian's death was the funniest among all Roman emperors, but the runner-up has to be Jovian. While en route back to Constantinople, the emperor was found dead in his tent. How did he die then? You see, the bedchamber walls had been freshly painted, and the tent had an active brazier. Under the fire, the fresh paint released poisonous fumes, which then suffocated the emperor in his sleep. And he had just been made emperor. A bad way to go. 8. Honorius in Rome. To say Honorius was an awful emperor would be an understatement. Killing the general trying to hold it all together and then needlessly angering loyal gods by killing their women and children put the Western Empire in a very precarious position. These very gods would eventually sack Rome itself. When Honorius heard Rome was lost, he was very sad. Was it because Rome had been sacked? No, of course not. It was because Honorius thought the messenger meant his favorite chicken, named Roma, had died. He was in a much better mood once he'd learned his favorite chicken was just fine. Number 7, Vedius Pollio's collection. Now, to be fair to Vedius, this may not actually be him, but another Vedius. Vedius Pollio was a Roman equestrian and a friend of Augustus. Known for living a lavish lifestyle, he is noted to have treated his slaves poorly. But this story isn't about slaves. Like I said, the Vedius in question may be another person altogether. This story comes from none other than Cicero himself, who, upon meeting Vedius, said, "I have never seen a more worthless man." Cicero would explain Vedius had left some items with another man named Vindulus, who in the meantime had died. When Vindulus's heir went to examine these items, he discovered 5 portrait busts of married Roman women, among them Junia Secunda, the wife of Lepidus. So why did Vedius have this collection? Well, Cicero presumes these were trophies of his sexual conquests, and ended up criticizing her indiscretion in correspondence, all the while praising her publicly. Politics. Number 6, Caracalla and the Parthian wedding. Caracalla was not a good emperor. He essentially did whatever he wanted and acted as he pleased towards his subjects. But this did not merely apply to his subjects. Caracalla was like this to everybody, including the biggest rival of Rome at the time, the Parthian Empire. Wishing to add Parthicus to his name, the emperor devised a devious plan. He sent the Parthian emperor a letter displaying his wishes to marry the king's daughter, sending lavish gifts along with the letter. The Parthian king, Artabanus, was understandably suspicious and so rejected the offer. But when Caracalla insisted, sending even more lavish gifts, Artabanus came to believe the offer was genuine and so accepted. But when the wedding took place, Caracalla made the signal and the party was slaughtered, looting swaths of Parthian lands as they made their way back into the empire. Ironically, this incident actually began the downfall of the Parthian kingdom, paving the way for the rise of the much more dangerous Sassanids. Number 5, Valentinian's bears. Emperor Valentinian made some very generous edicts, like reissuing an edict which made infanticide a capital offense. He also took an interest to the welfare of the poor, and founded schools and provided medical assistance to the poor people of Rome. Seems like a swell guy, right? Well, he was also known for having massive temper issues and being very cruel. He often had people executed on mundane charges, kept 2 bears, who he named Mica Aurea, Golden Flake, and Innocence, and at his will, he often used these bears to execute people he sentenced guilty of whatever crime they were charged with. But hey, at least he let Innocence live the rest of her days in the wild once he felt like she had killed enough people. What a nice guy. Number 4. Domitian's Banquet. Domitian was a difficult man to understand. The fact he was pretty authoritarian and a bit of a recluse made him be painted quite a bit worse than he actually was. One story goes, Domitian once prepared a banquet so frightening his guests actually feared for their lives. The banquet hall was painted entirely black. Through the flicker of grave lamps, the invited senators could see a row of tombstones, each inscribed with one of their names. Slave boys dressed as ghosts brought in courses on black dishes. They had food on it, but rather than the delicacies expected from an emperor, they were filled with plain offerings traditionally given to the dead. After dinner, in a full night where the guests were anticipating a row of executions to follow, Domitian revealed they were free to go. With the gravestones, now revealed to be made of silver, the dishes and the slave boys would be given to them as gifts. So what was Domitian actually thinking here? Was this a veiled threat to the senators? Well, probably. But what Domitian was doing was participating in a long-standing Roman banquet tradition, the memento mori. Gifts that reminded guests to enjoy their pleasures, for death was always next door. Number 3. Coriolanus and Family. Rome is a young republic, and still a fairly minor player in Italy. And the man in question is Gaius Marcius Coriolanus, a man who gained prominence after sieging the Volsci town of Corioli, hence Coriolanus. He promptly ruined his political ambitions by proposing the grain imported from Sicily should be distributed to the plebs for the price of either their political rights or money. No one, not even his fellow patricians, defended him, and he was put on trial. But he exiled himself to Volsci lands to dodge whatever fate was in store for him. To enact revenge, he actually gathered a Volsci army and began raiding Roman territory, eventually besieging Rome itself. So, how did the young city-state avoid such an end? They sent Coriolanus his mother and wife, who proceeded to scream at him until he caved in. His wife even brought his kids and scolded him in front of them. After being handpicked by the two major women in his life, Coriolanus gave in and ended the siege. Number 2. Servius Tullius' origin story. The Roman kings were almost certainly mythical figures. And to show you, I'll tell you a story regarding one of the Roman kings. There are many stories regarding the origin of Servius Tullius, the sixth king. Some say his mother was a young married noblewoman. Others say she was a virgin. Some stories even say she was a Vestal virgin, and it's following this assumption where our story begins. For after dampening the hearth fires with a sacrificial offering, she was penetrated by a phallus which arose from the flames. Yeah. She was left pregnant from this experience, and 9 months later popped out Servius Tullius. Number 1. Fausta, Milo, Vilius, and Longinus. This is Fausta. She is best known for being Sulla's daughter. This is Milo, her husband. And this is Vilius, a friend of Milo. And one story goes, Milo arrived home to find his wife and his friend doing the deed. And so Milo, understandably very angry, starts beating the ever-living piss out of his friend. But while Milo was busy thrashing Vilius out in the hall, pops out a second lover, a man named Longinus, sneaking into bed with Fausta and giving her the ride of her life. The best part about this is all true. Yes, this actually happened. The poet Horace even commented on it in his works. Vilius was actually distraught at the fact Longinus cuckolded him, without any regard for the fact that he too had cuckolded Milo. And thank you so much for watching this video. Leave a like, comment, and if you're not subscribed, then by all means do so. I'd really appreciate it. This was Spectrum, and I'll see you around.